What is going on? My name is Scott Schertzen, alongside Mr. Davion Bussey and Mr. Robert Manning, and welcome to a special interview episode of Tales from the Film Set. Alongside us today is Reverend Inman from the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival. We are going to be talking about the festival, what's upcoming, some weird stories, and honestly, some really, really great guests once again for this festival, including Jerry Mathers again, Patrick Duffy making his appearance for the first time, and a host of other stars to be excited about. Reverend, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for asking me to be on.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, yeah, in this case here, talk a little bit about the festival, how it started, what basically challenges you might have had at this point. You've been running this thing for a while now. Talk a little bit about that. And honestly, like I said, what you have upcoming for the end of the month here.
Sure. Well, this will be the 20th Cherry Blossom Festival. It's hard to believe. As they always say, time flies when you're having fun. It seems like we just started the festival the other day, but I guess when you're passionate about something, it doesn't really seem like work. So April 24th to the 27th will be the festival this year, and we, of course, semi-celebrate the entire week here in Marshfield as we lead up to the festival weekend. But we will be welcoming guests from all over the world. We, as you mentioned in your introduction, we have a great lineup of VIP guests this year, everything from pop culture stars to veterans of various wars, including World War II. We have a great array of those who've worked in the White House, a couple former White House chefs. We have presidential descendants of all shapes and kinds. And to answer your question of how the festival started, I just returned from Washington, D.C., from the National Cherry Blossom Festival. And visiting Washington, D.C. certainly made me think about the roots of our festival. I had the pleasure to spend some time in Washington after I graduated high school. And while there, I, of course, became homesick for Marshfield. So came back to Marshfield and then wished I had stayed in Washington. So, being a little bit fickle, I thought, well, we'll just plant cherry blossoms in Marshfield. And I guess it was kind of selfish. I'll have the best of both of my favorite places. And so we've began this project to beautify Marshfield with the planting of the cherry blossom trees. And the idea was that we would have an entire month of blooming because we planted more than one variety. And the capstone of the month of blooming would be the festival at the very end. And I didn't want us to have a festival that was a typical craft festival, as so many places are accustomed to. I wanted that to be a portion of it, but I wanted our festival to focus on history. Because when you think of cherry blossoms, you think of our nation's capital and, of course, the history associated there. So that's what we set out to do. And I always describe it as you put history in a blender and it blows up for 3 days because history goes many different directions. We don't often think about pop culture being a part of our history, but it's a huge part of our history. And you'll see everything at the festival over 3 days, from panels of former Secret Service agents to people speaking about books they've written on Lincoln, to Laura Ingalls Wilder, to, as you mentioned, Patrick Duffy making his inaugural visit to the festival. So there's something for everybody, and I hope that your listeners will come out.
Well, Robert Manning will be back out. This is, I believe, his third year covering the Cherry Blossom Festival for us. So grateful, definitely there. Rob is here too for this.
Yes. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, we love having him here.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it definitely there too. Talk a little bit, now that you're in your 20th season, and again, congratulations on that. Talk a little bit about the growth, from year one to now. I mean, is it something basically how big was it back then? Does it still surprise you to see 20 years later this thing is still not only just growing strong, but thriving and growing year after year?
Well, it absolutely does. And, it's really interesting to look in retrospect because when I started the festival, a good friend of mine said, not everybody likes history. Not everybody is going to appreciate the things that you find enjoyable about history. And, I was very fortunate. I had wonderful history teachers that brought history to life in a special way. It wasn't just about names and dates, etc. But the first festival I had in my mind, during a previous side note to this, Mary Jean Eisenhower had visited our school, President Eisenhower's youngest granddaughter. And during her visit, she made a comment that if you're interested in American history, you have to travel all over the nation to visit presidential libraries and birthplaces and cemeteries and things, there's no central place to go and learn about everybody in one place. And the actuality of the average American traveling all over the country just probably isn't going to happen to visit all those locations. So that was in the back of my mind, in addition to the idea of the cherry blossoms and the History Festival. So I thought, Marshfield is kind of the heart of the nation. President Bush 41, in his visit to Marshfield in 1991, called us the heartbeat of the nation. And I thought, this is a central place. People could come here and learn about our presidents, their families, and various forms of history. So I'm quite an avid presidential collector. So I thought, we'll just build a museum here, and that'll be kind of the gathering spot for the festival every year. So in the first festival, I thought, well, we'll not probably be able to get a former president or first lady to show up, as is the custom when you open a presidential library. But I thought, I bet I can assemble descendants of many of our former presidents. So it was very challenging contacting all these presidential libraries and foundations and things and finding who their official representative was. But at the first festival, we had over 30 administrations represented. And that was a big deal. And in the flip side of that, not only did that happen, but we also had rolled out the Missouri Walk of Fame for our festival, where we were going to include our state's history by honoring 6 famous Missourians with stars in the sidewalk. This was all going to happen in the same weekend. So, the festival crowd, to convince people in Marshfield, one, that we needed cherry blossoms, and two, that we were going to be bringing presidential descendants and famous Missourians together, they had a really hard time of understanding why we needed to do that. So I found real quick, one of the honorees for the 6 famous Missourians was Betty Lynn, who played Thelma Lou on the Andy Griffith Show. And people showed up in mass to see Betty Lynn, who might not have been interested in presidential history, but then they stayed to watch the rest of the programming. And they said to me later, that really was interesting. I never liked history, but I found that interesting.
Wow.
So to watch people develop a taste, thirst, a hunger to learn more about American history, and to watch the festival grow just a little bit more each year, and then to watch those guests that we've had over the years want to come back year after year, it's so rewarding to me, because I feel like we've done our job to educate people. And those original descendants that came the first year, the thing that really threw me off was I thought they would come one time and then they'd go home. And during their first visit, they were doing a panel of descendants, and one of them said, "Can we come back?" They asked me that from the stage, and I said, "Absolutely. Never thought they'd want to come back." I had a hard enough time convincing them to come the first time. And, they came from all over the country to little old Marshfield, Mayberry, USA, and they wanted to come back. And that amazed me. And some of our presidential descendants have been here all 20 years. In fact, there are several of them that have perfect attendance. And that amazes me. So as we prepare for this 20th anniversary, yes, we've seen great growth. Yes, we've seen new faces, which is always exciting. But I feel the real measure of success is when I see some of those faces that have continued to come back all 20 years.
Nice.
I have a question. This is Davion from the show. By you doing the Cherry Blossom Festival, so you're bringing history like the old school shows like Little House on the Prairie, MASH, all that as a part of history, so people can understand and see what people enjoy back in those days.
And Andy also brings actual historian people themselves. Like they've had the last surviving of the German surrender the last 2 years. I can't think of his name. Louis
Graziano.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's an interesting blend between both, obviously, the celebrity aspect of it and the historical aspect of it. And that makes it unique on 2 different fronts, because we cover a lot of conventions, but we never have anybody there that's tied to history and Americana and anything like that. And that's what makes your festival very unique, because it hits on 2 different fronts.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because, as I said, I had a history teacher that we brought in Barbie dolls and made fake movie blood. And when we learned about the guillotine, we cut their heads off, and he made history fun. It was exciting. And so I just don't have any understanding for somebody who, found history boring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think quite often when you sit in the audience and you hear from a primary source, just like was mentioned about Mr. Graziano, who is the last living witness to the German surrender, who was an aide to President Eisenhower,
Mm-hmm.
to hear those stories that bring those chapters of history to life beyond just black and white words in the textbook, that's key, and that's big. And, people grew up with these pop culture stars. When they meet Richard Thomas from the Waltons, they feel like they're meeting one of their siblings. And it's very personal, that history. So I found really, really quickly that people would come to see those folks and then stay and have a major dose of history beyond just the pop culture part. And that's been a big success for us.
Nice. So talk a little bit in this case here. Appreciate the time. Again, this is Reverend Inman from the Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival, now in its 20th season. Congratulations again on that. Talk a little bit about, we have to give obviously credit to the staff, because this is one of those things where these things are like planning a wedding every single year. You understand that top to bottom. Talk about basically the other people that are putting this together and all the, honestly, the pure hours they're putting in on this.
I love to talk about that, and I'm glad that you asked me that, because it really does take a village. So when the festival started, of course, I have to stress there are no paid staff members in the planning of our event. When the festival first started, we had a small committee and my family. And I really credit those people. This year, the first day of the festival, we're calling Founders Day. And we're really celebrating those people, because I think about how they must have really believed in what I said to them, or they were just being really nice, but they all said yes, they would help. And as the years have gone by and we've added more names, and some of those original people have passed away, it has made me really realize how fortunate we've been to have such an army of ground support. So what we saw was more people wanted to be involved than could serve on the actual committee. So then we had to start an auxiliary of volunteers, which I call, boots on the ground. And so my grandmother was the first president of that group, and now my mother is. And that's a whole army in itself of people that volunteer in different capacities. But beyond just the committees, like the auxiliary or the governing committee, there are so many subcommittees. There are committees that make sour cream twist for the tea. There's a sassafras tea committee that makes the tea. There's a group that makes enchiladas for the enchilada luncheon. There's so many moving parts that happen. There's a whole committee that makes cherry pies. And they have all that down to an art. We have a group of airport drivers that pick people up and take people back. There's a committee that oversees our host families. There's a committee that oversees VIP drivers while they're here in town. So there's a lot of moving parts to all that happens on the festival schedule, and it takes an army. And in addition to that, my family still helps. And you're right. It does take all year for the festival to happen. And we officially take off for the summer months. At least all the volunteers do. But in my house, we still live and breathe the festival all year. And our closets look like Pepto-Bismol's exploded all over, because we have pink coming out of our ears, because we wear pink at the festival for a whole week. And anytime we represent the festival, my kids have grown up knowing nothing but festival stuff. My daughter says she was volunteering at the festival before she was born. And that's true. My wife was pregnant with both of our kids while volunteering at the festival. So and in our family, it's been multi-generation, and many of our volunteers are now in that same situation. Multiple generations of their family have now been involved.
Wow. So sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead and say what you're going to say, Dave.
So pretty much this is like not just a family, but a community of families coming together to make this.
Absolutely. And I mentioned the host families. When we brought all these people to town, Marshfield's a town of about 6,000 to 7,000 people at that time. And we didn't have a lot of places to put people. So we, of course, filled the local bed and breakfast and the hotel here, but then I still needed places to put people.
Mhm.
So I asked local residents that I knew and said, hey, would you host President Monroe's family, or would you host the Truman family? And they opened their homes to these strangers from across the country.
Hmm.
And that did two
Wow.
things. It caused them to brush up on the history of the person they were hosting so they could have
Yep.
an intelligent conversation. And then it also gave that visitor a local connection.
Hmm.
They became friends with that person. They had a local tour guide. And some of those guests that I mentioned that have come all 20 years, they've stayed with the same family all 20 years. And they've gone to stay in their homes and vice versa. One of those families, they had a death of in their family, and the VIP guests came back for the funeral. You know, there's been major connections and bonds of friendship that have happened because of those host families. And I've always felt that was a huge key in the success of the festival as well.
Nice.
Great volunteers.
How big is Marshfield, by the way?
We're right about still that same number, 7,000 to 8,000, somewhere around
Not bad.
there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Rob, you had a question?
I was gonna say the thing that I love about the Cherry Blossom Festival the most is you see all the people that are gonna be there, and you just think in your head, I wonder how much it is to get in. And the answer to that is it is free.
Yeah.
It is free to walk in, and that's one thing that I gotta say, Reverend, is one of the things that it's the most honorable thing to be able to go to an event like this, and it's free to just walk in and meet these different people.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that is very important to me, and I have fought many battles about that over the years. Because, of course, when you look at it from a business sense,
Yeah.
you know, everybody thinks, oh, you should be charging so much a head for this, or you should be charging
Right.
for a 3-day pass or whatever. But it was important to me that everybody have access to their history.
Hmm.
Whether you had $1 million or you didn't have $1,
Yeah.
or you had 6 kids or 1 kid, you should be able to bring everybody to come and see it for free. Now, there are things that we do have to charge for, like meals, and
Mhm.
if we have a concert or something, but the panels are always free.
Yep.
And the autograph show, to be able to walk in the door, is free. Now, if you want to buy something from one of the stars, that's your business. But if you didn't have any money and you wanted to come and see your childhood idol,
Hmm.
you could walk in the door, see them, have a conversation with them, and not even have to spend a dime. That was important to me.
And that's another thing that I love about your show as well, is majority of the guests that what people don't know, like for example, the Little House on the Prairie guest, if you bring
Yeah.
your own item, most of them, if not all, only charge $10 to sign your item. And that is the most credible thing, because I personally go to a lot of conventions, and usually the lowest price that I've seen at an event is $40 to $50 per guest.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
I
Not to
do
mention
want
what
to
you
say,
pay to get in the door.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, we see a lot of people, especially with the Little House and the Waltons cast, a lot of homeschool families,
Hmm.
they get very excited about coming, that, you know, maybe have very large families. And a lot of the fans from those shows travel a long distance from any of those shows. And I want anybody that walks through the door to be able to walk through
Hmm.
and not have to think about budgeting for this or that, or, you know, whatever. I want them to be able to come in and have access to their history. And we've had people who were history makers at the festival who have passed away in this 20 years,
Wow.
that if you hadn't sat there and listened to them on stage, you'd have missed a valuable piece of history.
Hmm.
Yep.
And I want the next generation to be able to hear their history. My grandmother always says, learn from others' mistakes, because you'll never live long enough to make them all yourself. And I think that's what history allows us to do. So to see small children, large families, small families, whomever, sitting in the audience, soaking up, like Jim Lavelle, who was handcuffed to Oswald when he was shot,
Mhm.
or listening to Shigeko Sasamori, who was one of the survivors of Hiroshima, or to Mr. Graziano or others, to share their firsthand accounts key moments in our history. I think that's important, and we're passing a wisdom to another generation. So for them to be able to come and it to be free, that will always be my goal.
Nice. Okay, you had something?
Yeah, so as far as the media aspect or the press involved or anything like that, do y'all have a department that handles, like, let's say if y'all want to do one of those moments where you interview somebody and get that information?
Your question was about the press?
Yeah.
I handle a lot of the press arrangements because I'm a former member of the press.
Okay.
So I feel like I know that department really well. And to be frank about it, we don't get a lot of requests from the press.
Yep.
Which is good but disappointing too. You know, I think one thing that attracts a lot of our visitors is they get to come to Marshfield and they get to feel like they live here. They don't get mobbed everywhere that they go, and they get to feel like they have an Americana moment. And I think it's kind of nice sometimes when they're not have 1,000 microphones stuck in their face and people trying to trip them up on this word or that word. And not that all the press does that, but you know what I mean by that. They get that a lot when they're being celebrities other places. And it's nice that they can come here, and if they want to sit down and do a podcast interview, or if they want to do a newspaper interview, it's a much lower key situation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit, I guess we'll wrap this up in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about, like I said, what you have upcoming in this one. Also definitely, include, how we can get in touch with you, how we can find out more about this, everything involved there too. So.
Absolutely. Well, let me say that first. If you would like to learn more about this year's festival, which is going to be just dynamic, the festival's Facebook page is a really good place to start because you get instant updates all the time. The website is great as well, but if you want the most current release of who's coming, go to the Facebook page, which is Missouri Cherry Blossom Festival in Marshfield, Mo. And our website is Cherry Blossom Fest, FEST.com, and that is a good place to go to learn about past years and the different awards that we give. There's all of that can be found there. So to answer your question, there's so much going on this year. Beginning on Tuesday, the week of the festival, we'll have Square Dance, which, of course, our festival focuses on the preservation of American state and local history. And square dancing was a big tradition of the Ozarks. So that's a good tie to our local history. And then we go into Wednesday, and Wednesday is not an official day on the calendar, the festival calendar, but it's a day filled with all kinds of activities. We have a living history museum that happens that day for the third graders in the area. And I think we'll have 600 to 700 third graders coming to hear from presenters about famous Missourians. And then that night, kind of to kick off the official start of the festival, David Osborne, who has been presidential pianist to maybe like 5 or 6 presidents, plays in Las Vegas nightly, played at both President and Mrs. Carter's funerals in recent years. He will be giving a free concert for the festival's anniversary.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Excited about. He's one of Steinway's official artists. And so that will be kind of a special birthday anniversary gift for everybody. And then we begin into Thursday, where we have speaker after panel after speaker. Fantastic programming for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with all kinds of different historical panels. We're having a naturalization ceremony at the festival again this year. This is the second year we've included that. And President Carter's grandson, James, will be speaking at the naturalization ceremony. And I think it's fantastic for the new citizens. I think there's 48 of them. And, I mean, you're joining a new nation, and they're half of the descendants of most of our presidents. You know, where else are you going to get the opportunity to get to see the relatives of those who you've been studying to become a citizen?
Sure.
That's kind of fascinating to me. We'll do, for the second time, we're having donkey basketball. which will be kind of fun. It's fun to watch some of our celebrity guests and presidential descendants and local people try to get on a donkey and play basketball. That is worth the ticket price. You will laugh until you will just about bust.
We're going to get video of that one way or another. I'm going to make sure Rob does that.
Which day is that again?
Which day was that, by the way?
That is on Thursday night of the festival.
Thursday night.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we have the Cherry Blossom Tea, and that's a huge event every year where the ladies all get out their hats and have a big craft tea, which is a part of the Ozarks culture. And two of the former White House chefs will be speaking at that.
Nice.
We have a sit-down interview on stage this year with Richard Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter Reagan will be conducting that interview. Richard has a long history with the festival. This will be his second visit.
Nice.
My daughter started campaigning for Richard to come when she was in kindergarten.
Okay.
Started a whole Facebook movement of Bring John Boy to Marshfield.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was in the 5th grade, he finally visited. And he has stayed in contact all these years. So as a special anniversary gift, he's coming back, which is exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Then, of course, on Friday and Saturday of the festival, we have our Nostalgia Fest autograph show.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big festival event. In addition to all the dinners and panels and things that you'll find on our schedule. And then the big pinnacle event for the weekend is the Saturday night state dinner. And Patrick Duffy will be our guest speaker this year.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And then Sunday, we call it Cherry Blossom Sunday for those who are still here. And many of our churches will welcome VIP guests in as their speakers for the morning. Our church is hosting Tony Loudon, who was President Carter's minister.
Okay.
So it was kind of exciting. And then in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, we have the First Lady's Piano Concert. And 14 pianists and one organist all play simultaneously with 2 people on each bench. And they have a whole free concert of patriotic and gospel music. And that's phenomenal to witness. And then the final event, the College of the Ozarks from Branson, Missouri, they send their band and they perform at Marshfield High School in the gym, and they give the Helen Taft Band concert as the free concert to end the festival. So it's a big weekend.
Yeah. Day, you had something, Day?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you have like the best pie contest or?
We do.
Okay.
We do cherry pies.
Okay.
Fitting.
Of course, the Hubble dinner occurs on Friday night, and that is in honor of Edwin Hubble, who was our native son and the namesake of the Hubble telescope. And we have a replica of the telescope on our courthouse lawn, and we honor national individuals who have shown great initiative in their chosen field. Part of that dinner, we announce the winners of the cherry pie contest, and then we have a cherry pie auction. And then whoever wins the winning bids for the pie, it's usually customary that they share the pie with the people at their table. And there's been some fun moments watching Nikita Khrushchev's son, Sergei Khrushchev, eating cherry pie with Eisenhower's granddaughter. Of course, Khrushchev and Eisenhower have quite a contentious relationship, and to see their descendants sitting there eating cherry pie together, I call that a healing moment of American history. That
wow.
The cherry blossom.
Yo, I'm going to be honest. This is making me want to go down there.
Yeah, right.
And I do want to say what's incredible and how I found out about this event. Like we said, this will be my 3rd year going, but how I found out about this event, and it's a returning guest that's coming this year, is it all started with Margaret Carey.
We love Margaret.
Yes.
We call her the Queen of the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yes, and I'm a huge Tinkerbell fan, and I just got to see her at 2 events before. And her spirit, she's one of the nicest ladies. And if you don't know who she is, she's the original dancer / actor that they used for the animation of Tinkerbell in the original Peter Pan movie. And so when I went to her page, I live in Arkansas, and she had this event called the Cherry Blossom Festival in Marshfield, Missouri. And when I looked up where Marshfield was, I was like, wait, this is only an hour and a half. How am I just finding out about this event? You know, and I found out about the event like the week before the event. And then we got in touch with you, Reverend, and I just gotta say you've been very awesome. And to go back on what Day was saying earlier, you know, being able to do the press, I go up when they don't have a line and I go, hey, I'm doing press for the event. Can I interview you? And most of them, they're like, yeah, let's do it right now. I did learn from being there 3 years that you got to take the moment. If they don't got someone, go do it now, because they may leave for lunch or something and then you don't get them, you know? And then
never know.
you probably won't see the Reverend on the floor because he's running with his head cut off. I mean, I finally got to meet him last year for a quick second. I was like, oh.
You know, I usually make it to the autograph show about once during the festival, and it's usually 5 or 10 minutes. I pop in just to say hello, and then I'm off. But
and then he's out of here.
What's fun about becoming friends with so many people from the festival, we call them the Cherry Festers. And like the trip I just mentioned in Washington, D.C., a bunch of the Cherry Festers went on the trip. It's nice to get to spend time with those friends outside of the festival, because during that week, you know, it's a blur, and I don't get to actually sit down and visit with anybody. So I really enjoy getting to spend time with them outside of festival time, too, because many of them have become like extended family to our family, and we really enjoy getting together with all of them. So I'm so glad to hear you say that you'll be back for the third time, because that says success to me, that people want to come back. And I love
and
to hear
you guys got
it's our gratitude as well.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
Thank you.
But, all right, Reverend Inman, we'll let you go, but I definitely appreciate the time. Wait, Rob had one more question. Sorry.
Yeah, I did want to say, what are your future goals for the event within the next couple of years?
Well, that's an interesting question. At last year's state dinner, I announced that our family was forming the Cherry Blossom Foundation, because as we discussed, the festival has become a full-time job. And, you know, I'm a minister, and I'm also the executive director of the Laura Ingalls Wilder Home and Museum in Mansfield. So, you know, my energies are pulled many different ways, as are all the festival volunteers. So I really want to see us hire a festival director. And so the goal was our Cherry Blossom Committee and our Cherry Blossom Auxiliary, they combined into one group. And then the Festival Foundation has become the new governing body of the festival. And our goal is by year 25 to be able to hire a full-time festival director to take us into the future.
Nice.
Because, of course, we want the festival to continue to grow. We want to continue to see all of its success, and I feel as the founder that that's the best way to move us forward. So our volunteers and our family and the festival guests have all been so supportive of that idea, because we want to continue to see the festival build upon the foundation that's been laid.
Nice. So that'll definitely help you out in this case here too, without a doubt.
Thank you.
So,
and last question. Do you think we can expect any more last-minute guest announcements?
You just never know.
he's keeping that close to his chest for the moment. So
we used to say that's the rest of the story.
That's the rest of the story.
And one thing he didn't mention is please go follow their Instagram.
Yes.
And Instagram is new. My daughter has really been pushing us in that direction, and I'm terrible about using Instagram myself, but for our younger audience especially, that's a good place to plug in. So yes, please visit there too. I'm glad you mentioned that.
We'll link it in. I know exactly the Instagram, so I'll link it in here.
We'll include it in there, definitely.
Thank you.
Marshfield Cherry Blossom.
All right. Reverend Inman, I appreciate the time. Thank you again. One more time. One more time. What are the dates on it?
April 24th through the 27th.
Nice. So, thank you again. Looking forward. Again, congratulations on all the work you put in on this year in, year out. Again, 20 years doesn't feel like 20 years, but at the same time, you've done such a great job with this year in and year out. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's a full-time job in its own right, and a great cast list. So definitely check it out.
Thank you
So.
so much for helping.
My pleasure. Stay well now.
Mhm.
Thank you again.